Good evening, everybody, and thank you all for coming to this evening's meeting of the Warrant Committee. We do have a quorum, I'm very happy to say, so we can begin right away. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes of our last meeting, which you all received. Does anybody have any additions, deletions, corrections?
Actually, I had one. I think it was on Article 11, the firehouse.
Yes?
It indicated that I had seconded it, and I don't believe I did.
Okay.
I'll look back on this.
We'll just check that and make sure that we correct that. Anybody else? Okay, if that's the case, with that one perspective change, do we have a motion to accept the minutes?
I so move.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion further? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Our next order of business is we received a request from the library trustees for reconsideration of the motion to deny or to recommend against the transfer of the Kidder Branch Library property. This is Article 14. In a discussion with John Focarelli, who is the chair of the library trustees, they have indicated they would like to have the opportunity to take the property discussions further with the town. I had mentioned to him that the conversations that we had here, our discussions, dealt in detail with options that might exist and asking whether or not the library trustees had developed other options, had they discussed opportunities with other departments of the town, etc. He said they had had conversations, but there was still the feeling among the library trustees that disposition of the property would be in everybody's interest. They would like to continue, based upon the sense that I conveyed to him on behalf of the committee, to have the opportunity to discuss with other parts of the town, other departments, etc., other uses for the property, rather than have it go to the town meeting and have it denied. So I will need a motion to reconsider and open the discussion up on Article 14 for the transfer of the Kidder Library property. Can someone give me a motion on that?
So moved.
We have a second. Thank you. We have a second, Christine. So is there any discussion? Does anybody have any objection to reconsidering that? And the article would be changed, rather than voting a no, recommending a no to the town meeting, would be voting to remand it to the library trustees for further discussion.
That makes sense.
Everybody in favor? Okay. Yep. All right, so we have the motion, we have it seconded. All in favor of taking Article 14 and changing the recommendation from a no vote, no recommendation, to remanding it to the library trustees.
And they're going to look for other
Yes,
options?
yes. And they'll have further, I believe, what he had told me is they want the opportunity to discuss options within the town, for the departments of the town to find alternate uses before we look at an outright sale.
And then
Because
we'll vote on it.
the concept is it was a gift to the town, not to the library trustees as a group. And in order to make that gift actually for the town, the discussion is, all right, let's see if there are other uses within the town rather than a disposition.
So they'll go back and then we'll vote on it again? Okay.
They can bring up, well, at this point, we're remanding it to them. They can decide when they want to bring it back to us with other recommendations. That's basically what happens.
Because if we say recommend a no vote, they will then have to wait the 6 months year to bring another article
Exactly.
to ask for permission all
Exactly
over
right.
again.
The
Whereas
clock
this
is
way,
ticking.
we're just tabling it.
It's basically, it's tabling, sending it back, go think about this a little more before you come back to us. And it actually makes a lot more sense, because this way their hands won't be tied the same way. All right, so we have that. Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All opposed? No opposed. Excellent, passes. So the recommendation is changed for the transfer of the Kidder Library for Article 11 to remand it to the committee of the library trustees for future discussion. Very good. Okay. This brings us to the discussion and approval of the zoning bylaws from the planning board. Cheryl, thank you very much for coming. We have discussed all of these in some detail, so if you just want to highlight very quickly, because I would like to get these discussed and voted. We have to do that tonight because we have to have the comments prepared within 24 hours. and get these out to the printer. So any help that you're able to give us in gloss for the individuals who are going to draft the comments for these remaining articles will be great. The first question I had for you, you sent us an email, sent me an email which we shared, suggesting that the Chapter 11, the amendment to Chapter 11, which appears as Article 9, you've asked for it to be remanded to the committee for additional consideration?
Correct.
Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay, that one, is there any change to that request from the planning board?
I just want to make sure that I have the correct article.
Right, this is
It's the
the
Planning Board Associate. Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
What was the rationale for remaining? Do you still, you just want a little more time to consider it?
The Government Study Committee apparently discussed it at a meeting. They had spent a fair amount of time on some similar article
Yes.
about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And they just recently shared their research with us, and
Yeah.
so out of respect for that consideration, we wanted to have a chance to review what they had done, and then we'll bring this back after we do that.
Okay, so the effective rationale there is to consider other models that have existed in other towns, or?
Well, they, in their research, and in an article that they had put forth 5 years ago, they didn't have as much restriction on it as we have on ours currently. There's some law around why some of that has to be that way, apparently state law, but other aspects of it, we thought we should still consider. Right now, ours is limited to discussion of special permits only, and they asked us to consider whether that could be others. So I don't have all my notes, but I don't
But
recall
the-
if that was one of the things
Yeah.
that town council advised was required by law. But that was one of the questions they had also, we had proposed a one-year term, they had proposed a two-year term. They had also suggested appointed, we had in ours appointed rather than elected. But we wanted a chance to go through their research, really, and consider what they had put forth in the article to see if there's anything in that we would find valuable, to consider in the article. So that's, and also with this time frame, as we've discussed, we didn't have another meeting to consider further changes to it other than that one, and we felt as if we couldn't do it that night.
Okay. We understand the need for further research and for further discussion very, very, very well.
Okay.
Does anybody have any questions for Cheryl on this one? Because this one we can vote pretty quickly, I think. So I'd like a motion to remand Article 9 to the Planning Board for further consideration.
Did we already vote on that?
We did not.
Okay.
We haven't voted on any of the articles from the
Okay.
Planning
No,
Board.
just making sure, didn't have to reopen.
Yes,
it.
no, we don't. Article 9, we haven't voted on any of the Planning Board just because we wanted the final
Yep.
versions, which we all have, and we've all had a chance to look at them. If someone make a motion,
So moved to
remand Article 9 to the committee. Seconded. Very good. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? You're in favor or opposed? In favor. Okay, all in favor. Thank you very much. No opposed. Article 9 is remanded. We will recommend remanding it to the committee, to the planning board. Okay, so let's begin with Article 1 and see if we can see how quickly we can get through these as we've already discussed them. Article 1 amends Chapter 10 of the general bylaws for height regulations. We have the language in front of us. These deal with very particular regulations with regard to roof slopes and heights for residences in specific districts. What was the rationale here?
You may recall that we said that there had been
An inadvertent
an
deletion.
inadvertent deletion. That had been in October of 2014.
No.
And
Okay, I couldn't find it.
So I
we
could,
want to basically reinstate what was inadvertently removed.
where is the specific area which was removed?
All of this language had been
All
removed.
this language had
yeah.
been removed.
I believe
Okay.
it was Article 10. Again, I don't have that, but if you need that, I can find it for you.
That would be very helpful.
Okay.
Which article was omitted?
I
And just
have it,
restoring
I just don't
because
have
if
it
we
with
can be as
me.
specific as possible, because I'm sure somebody in the town meeting is going to want the detail.
I'll email
John.
that to you, George, okay?
The Chair is correct, it was Article 10 of the 2014 Fall Town Meeting.
Thank you.
Article 10
Thank you.
of 2014 town meeting, the warrant report,
Fall town meeting.
fall town meeting 2014, fall town meeting. And it restores the language to Article 10. Okay.
That's
this-
all it does. It doesn't
okay,
amend
that's
anything
fine.
else.
Okay, that's fine. If that's the case, we've understood that. Is there a motion that we can entertain to restore this language and recommend approval to the town meeting of Article 1? We have a motion, we have a second. Second. Any discussion on this?
So this doesn't change anything that you're operating under, like, or we have been doing? It just is
No.
restoring things as you've understood it. It's more of a
Right.
clerical thing
Yes.
that we actually
It would
deleted it from the
actu-
paper, but you've always been acting that way anyways.
Yeah, maybe Mr. Flynn can correct me, but I actually think currently if somebody applied and didn't,
Yes.
comply with this, I'm not sure that we would have
There'd be
the.
no
A
enforcement
legal
technically.
legal basis.
Yeah,
Yes.
so there is some urgency.
Yes,
It's been
so-
some time that nobody
Okay.
realized it.
But in practical terms, nothing has changed other than
Then we
the,
had a little angel sitting on our shoulder for a little
Yes.
while, so
That's
we won't
right.
complain too
Nobody
loudly.
noticed.
Right.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor of voting to approve this and recommending it to town meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Any opposition? Excellent. As recommended to approve for the town meeting. Approval. Article 2, which is Chapter 10 of the Amendment to the General Bylaws of the zoning bylaws for home occupation use. We have read this. Cheryl, what is the substantive? There was
So-
no substantive change to this one that I saw in your comments.
Right, so there's just some clarification of language, but also in paragraph B, where I think I mentioned that we had been thinking that that could be clarified a bit, and so town council provided some language which the planning board supported. So clarifying that,
This is only persons residing in the dwelling may engage in home occupation. There shall be no more than 3 persons engaged in the home occupation. That,
right, so it now says only persons residing in the dwelling may manage, operate, or be employed by the home occupation, and there shall be no more than 3 persons involved in managing or operating the home occupation or be employed by the home occupation.
okay. Everybody has those changes. There's substantively no change.
Yeah, and then, otherwise, as you may recall, this was just changing the responsible party for approving this from town clerk to the building commissioner. And they both brought this forward to the planning board for our consideration, so they support this. And there was
From the
no
town,
opposition to
changes
it.
to the planning board.
No, it changes it to the building
The
commissioner.
building commissioner from the planning board.
Mm-hmm.
And they're fully supportive of this.
Yes.
Okay. Is everybody clear on what it is that's required when we write this comment? That it's the planning board who's giving up the responsibility, so that accepting the responsibility from the building commissioner, and it was at their request. And both are supportive of this change.
Yeah.
Okay. If that's the case, as I say, we've discussed this in detail. Has anybody any questions for Cheryl before we move on? Very good. May I have a motion to recommend Article 2 to the town meeting?
So moved.
Second? Second, Christine, thank you. Any further discussion? Very good. All in favor? Aye. Passes. So Article 2 is recommended for approval. Okay, Article 3 amends the bylaws for parking in the front and the side setback areas. Again, I did not note significant change in the language of any sort.
So, in this one, George, it had been pointed out to us at the public hearing that, in fact, it did not limit this to corner lots, which we had said is our desire.
Right.
So the language was amended to make sure that it was purely for corner lots. So at the end of the second paragraph, the last sentence was added, which says, "In this context, a corner lot means a lot which borders the intersection of 2 streets or ways." And then the same sentence was added in the last paragraph.
Okay.
And then I distributed here some diagrams. So the first, this one, the hand one, has a front. So the way the bylaw is applied now is just to, if the address of this is, let's call this A Street at the
Yep.
bottom and B Street on the left. If the address, let's say, is 10 A Street, then your front is here on A Street. And this has been treated as a side with respect to this parking question, not as a side for everything. You don't need to get into all the complexities of that. So if you turn it around, then this is saying, this would now apply to both of these because they both front streets. Now, to make this a little bit clearer, because I felt as if that, and there were others who felt as if that may not be.
Crystal.
And here's one of the parties who thought it may not be as clear. I did a different diagram. I took a parcel, which I don't think needs to be identified, but I wanted to have something that showed a true example.
Yeah.
And this one actually has 3 streets, but if we focus on the 2, and the front being on the right,
Yep.
and the setback required in a Residence C district being 20 feet, 30% of that is shaded in a cross-section, right? So that's how much would be allowed in that front
I
drive.
see. Okay.
But on the top of the sheet, there would be no restriction to how much of that could be paved. And so you can see here, there is pavement there, and then there is pavement on the rear street as well. So if this passed, what's shown here on this, where 30% is shown on that side, the red portion would be too much. They would have had too much pavement in the setback. And that's just to help not have, too much pavement in the yard, so, on the street there.
And this only deals with new,
Yeah, so if something
new construction,
exists,
new-
you're not,
you're not
you're
going to ask them
not-
to
right.
redo and
Right.
plant grass where there might be pavement.
right.
Okay. Does everybody understand the additions to the language? If that's the case, the chair will entertain a motion to approve Article 3 and recommend it for adoption by the town meeting. These clarifications.
So moved.
Second, anywhere? Thank you. Any discussion further? We're all clear?
question.
Go ahead, Clinton.
So if this is a pre-existing property, and they want to, extend the paved area there? You're saying that they won't be able to do that?
If they exceed 30% in both of those, they would not be able to do it, right?
Of both of those? What's on this side right here, the side yard setback?
Right, so, let's just say that they didn't have on the top here, right? Let's just say this was a proposal for paved area instead of
Okay.
an existing.
Right.
So if the building commissioner were to look at this, they'd say, you exceed the 30% of the setback being paved with what you propose to do. You're limited to this amount of pavement in that yard, in that side yard, on that street.
Okay. Got it? Happy?
So, because the front yard is a larger, 20-foot distance, so it's a greater area, so it's 30% of it is a greater, by square footage, larger area. Because the side is a 10-foot,
Yeah.
you could still pave into all of this area because that's not in the setback. We're only restricting the amount that's in the setback.
setback.
What you do within those setback inward towards the house is not restricted.
Got it. Okay. Everybody clear?
Yeah.
Okay. If there are no other questions, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
I abstain from that one.
One abstention. Passes. Thank you very much. Article 3 is cleared for a landing. Article 3 is recommended. Article 4 amends Chapter 10 of the bylaws for non-conforming structures. Cheryl, do you want to give us the quick and dirty on this one? On the changes that came up?
All right, I'm just going to also distribute this diagram, which we've talked about, but, so some of this, I think I explained before, was that there was an article that passed town meeting a year ago that the building commissioner has found to be less clear than what the prior language was, and therefore he had made this suggestion of this revised language, because if you look at this example, let's say this is an existing home on an existing parcel, And the setback requirement is the dashed line, and the home is closer to the lot line than is allowed by the current zoning. Also, the existing height is higher than what's allowed by the zoning today. But because the way the language was before, it was unclear to some people, the building commissioner interpreted that you were not allowed to build without going for a variance upward, basically extending that nonconformity upward without a variance. Some people disagreed with his interpretation of the zoning, so he wants to make the zoning clearer, so that what you would still have to go to the Board of Appeal if you wanted to continue beyond what exists today, that nonconformity. So where this, if you were to build what's in blue, you'd still have to go for a variance. But or seek a special permit. If you see what's within the dash line, that would be within the existing zoning, so you wouldn't have any special requirement under that. So what he's basically trying to do is make it clear in the language the way that he's been enforcing the zoning on a pre-existing non-conforming, whether it's a violation horizontally as a setback or violation vertically as a height. So there was no significant question about that at our public hearing. There was, some slight, I think Mr. Flynn or town council had a minor change to that, but otherwise the language is the same as what was before.
Yeah, I didn't detect any difference. Okay, is there any question further?
I have one.
Go ahead, Clinton.
This is the structure here, so, right, this is the
Yeah, the arbitrary diagram here, yes?
So, they would need a permit to
Right, so
extend
the-
it based on what it already has.
Right, so the thought is that while the existing house, is non-conforming and pre-existing, extending that non-conformity vertically might present a hardship to a neighbor,
Right.
because it's a lot more volume. It might impact their sunlight, it might impact,
Aesthetics for that matter.
right. And so that, a variance gives an abutter or a neighbor an opportunity to go speak about whether they support that or not.
Right. And as opposed to a special permit, which would be required, a variance or a special permit?
The special permit would allow you to do what's in the dash line.
Yes.
The variance would still be required for what's outside the dash line.
So you might need both, theoretically.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically.
Depending on what the request is.
Yeah, I mean, the burden is higher for a variance, and
Okay.
so it should be, for that kind of potential impact could be greater, so it should be a higher burden, basically, is what the planning board feels.
Okay, but it would require one or the other, or perhaps both, depending on
Right.
what the nature of the
Right.
alteration is, to the
Right.
pre-existing non-conforming.
Right.
But it clarifies that this has to be done in order to secure the ability to make the change.
Correct.
Okay.
And as it is now, do they need a variance to do the blue?
Yes. But
As
it's
it-
been a question about the way he's
Enforcing it.
interpreting the language. So he feels as if sometimes there's a challenge to his interpretation because the language he feels isn't clear enough. And so he wants to make the language more clear so that the way he's been enforcing it is more readily black and white in
Right,
the language.
right. So this enforcement would make, this clarification would make the enforcement and application
Easier.
more enforceable, right. It would make it easier and more straightforward.
Right.
Okay.
So basically, you would have had to get a variance to make the addition in blue area previously, but building commissioner is saying other people are pushing back at him.
He's saying the
just to
language
make-
isn't clear enough to.
Yeah,
and-
because other people might be pushing back saying, no, I don't, and so to make it more clear as to what actually needs to happen in his authority, that's all this is.
Right, I mean, I believe that applicants have an opportunity to appeal a decision. So, if it's clear, if the language is clear, then I
Less
think he feels.
confusion, less paperwork,
confusion,
less,
right?
okay.
Have I explained that well, Jen?
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
Right.
that's fine.
Always a good thing. Clarity helps, sunshine and light on things helps vision and visibility. So if there's no other discussion, the Chair will entertain a motion to recommend Article 4 for approval to the town meeting.
So moved.
Have a second? Do we have any discussion? Very good. All in favor of recommending Article 4 to the town meeting for approval? Aye. 1, 2, 3. Very good. Passes. No further discussion. Article 5.
There were
this is-
significant changes to this one.
Yes. Traffic mitigation had some changes. Okay. Walk us through it.
Okay, so.
Everybody did receive these changes, I'm guessing. Yes. Okay, good. I just want to make sure if anybody needs it. Okay.
Sure.
You want to share my red line with me?
Okay. After the meeting, we'll meet up and I'll make sure I have your correct email address.
If you don't mind, I'll just share with you so I can go through it. Right.
Okay. Hit it, Lynn.
Okay, so there were
sorry.
two speakers who spoke quite a bit to this article at our public hearing, both are attorneys, and so there was discussion at the meeting that we didn't want to send this back. We wanted to address the changes right at our meeting, so this is what we did at the meeting. So it seemed, people felt as if, those folks, and perhaps others, felt as if some of the language in these bullet points was unnecessary.
Yep.
And so, that may be distracting, so it was removed.
Yep.
In fact, on page 2, another set of bullet points, the same thing, so those were removed.
Yep.
And then, under the development traffic impact standards in section 1, there's a, scenic roads has a particular definition in Milton, whereas people thought otherwise scenic and residential streets was rather undefined. So that's why that change was made. Under determination of traffic impact, this is where this really came about at the suggestion of Town Council John Flynn in terms of being more clear about what this applies to, because I think state law only allows it to apply to certain, I guess what you call, is it applications, John? Certain applications where this can be applied. It's not wholesale. Some language about definition of terms, like that's what the engineer definition came from. And then on page 3, again, really this is some language smithing. Page 4, there was a lot of discussion about, under establishment of TDM goals and requirements, the discretion to demand. So strongly encourage, actually, we couldn't demand. It's only allowed to strongly encourage. At the bottom,
Yep.
John, I've forgotten the details of why this was suggested to be removed.
Which one is-
On bottom of page 4. I think this was actually because since we couldn't demand it, we couldn't demand that it be reviewed on a periodic basis. Is that right? Okay. That language was very specific to the demand versus strongly encourage.
Right.
On page 5, making some language consistency in terms of when things are capitalized or not, the name of the actual fund itself. That's pretty much throughout this page, that kind of revision, so not significant in terms of content.
Okay.
And then on page 6, similarly, that's it.
Okay. Is everybody clear on the changes? Does anybody have any questions? Any questions? Doug?
Just not sure, and you may have actually done it, because I don't think I have a copy of all the changes, red line, I can't find it, I'm going after the old one. And with the special permit granting authority, it may require mitigation measures and/or a monetary contribution. I know we had you may have already answered this, and I apologize, I don't have the newer copy with the changes. But just to make sure, because I know it was raised in the past of, I'm afraid I don't know what changed, because we're on different versions.
It's on.
It's beginning the
first-
paragraph,
it's the first
traffic impact mitigation, I think towards the end of the first paragraph. The special permit granting authority, SPGA. Requires mitigation
The
measures,
and/or.
the and/or, I think there was confusion.
Yeah, we
as to
talked about
Was
that, I think, and I had suggested if we could think of it in a similar way that we do to affordable housing. So let's say if we have a 10% requirement and you have 12 units, you're required 1.2 units. Well, you don't build a 0.2 unit, you build
Yes.
one unit and you make a 0.2
Okay.
monetary contribution to the affordable housing trust. So in a scenario like this, it might be that a certain mitigation measure, it costs, a certain amount of money, but that's not the full value of the mitigation that's deemed appropriate. So then you might still do one portion of it and then make a contribution. And it might be such that it would be something where it was contemplated that 2 or 3 projects were happening in a similar time, and that one larger mitigation was going to be done by the combined funds, so we would want all of it to go to fund, so it could help support the larger investment.
Yes.
So it gives flexibility.
Yep. That's fine, I just remembered it being a question before, wanted to make sure.
Okay.
For our members who are not here tonight.
Yes, indeed.
But thank
No,
you.
It was certainly brought up at other meetings.
Yeah.
The concept was discussed in detail. Any other questions? Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to recommend Article 5 to the town meeting.
So move.
Second? So, motion has been approved and seconded, had been moved and seconded to recommend for approval Article 5 as amended by the planning board. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you very much. Article 5 passes as recommended. Article 6 kind of sort of relies on Article 5 based on my notes here. Cheryl, how are we doing with that one?
Well, on this one, I think you folks did ask whether there could be a limit to how much is
Yes.
expended, and that was added, in fact. So is it $50,000 was added? And then town council added paragraph B to this, which would put it into the, where the revolving funds are all on one chart and voted as such, that
Yes.
it would be added to that.
Right.
Which we didn't have in the article
Right.
previously.
So so it will actually be visible as a separate line item?
Correct.
Right, which is what we like all the time.
Those are the significant changes.
Those are the changes.
Yeah.
Is everybody clear? Does anybody have any questions on that one? Okay, as I say, we discussed this one at least 2, if not 3 of the meetings in some detail, so that, we're pleased with that. I think I can speak for the committee that we're happy to have those changes incorporated, and thank you for putting them in. So if that's the case, Article 6, I have a motion to approve as amended by the planning board for submission to the town meeting.
So move.
Motion, do we have a second? Second, very good. Any discussion further? All in favor? Thank you. Motion passes. Article 6 will be recommended for approval to the town meeting. Very good. Okay, so Article 7 is for is the very complex Brook Road overlay to the special permit 21 Special Brook Road Overlay District, Section 3, subsection 5.
So you did receive, George, an email from John regarding some
Some of the
language
language
revision
changes,
to
yes.
this, right?
We passed it along, yes.
Okay. The, otherwise, though, on paragraph 2,
Yep.
there was clarification of the parcel
Right.
numbers. There were some discrepancies that are taken care of there.
And the section, now we have in the warrant articles the correct designations. We have the right dimensions and the right...
These are the right
the right-
designations, yes.
Okay, fine, okay. And John, you've seen all this and everything's clean. Okay, fine, I just want to be sure.
And then in paragraph 3, it was noted that we should say, add the words after the word lot in the Brook Road Overlay District, which we felt actually was a very good catch and a good addition.
Yep,
In paragraph 7, I think we had the conversation about where it said traditional building materials, and John and I worked on this language. Building materials consistent with residential construction
Yep.
is what we came up with.
okay.
And then in just a deletion of a word in word that in paragraph 10, and then in paragraph 12, a reference to special permit in section 9C. And then in paragraph 14, some clarification on the bond or surety. So those were the changes. There was support of this at the public hearing.
Yes. Good.
As I've said to you before, there's been support of this all along.
I think this is a nice thing to clean up a part of the town that has been neglected. So I think there's a lot of, I think you get a lot of very favorable comment. I think there'll be a lot of discussion because a complex article of this nature is going to get people's interest to make sure that somebody hasn't missed something somewhere, but this is very comprehensive, so.
So a couple of things I pointed out at the hearing, and I think when we first spoke, is that this is a busy intersection.
Yes.
This bylaw requires driveway access to be, well, first of all, it requires the parcels to be consolidated or combined, so it requires some acquisition by one party or another. And then it requires the frontage to be along Laurel Road, which then requires the driveway to come in off of Laurel, so it takes in and out access off of that difficult intersection. So that's a safety improvement, we feel, for vehicles and pedestrians, bicyclists alike. And then the other thing is that it requires parking and garage doors to be at the rear, so that the presentation to the street, even though there's 6 townhouses, does not have 6 garage doors and 6 driveways off to the street. So, there are some things that, while the zoning sounds a little bit complicated, the zoning is tailored to some of the conditions very specific to these parcels.
Absolutely, so the aesthetics have been considered. This is for whoever is drafting that article, those points are very important. Those are important points to raise in the comment section, because I don't think you necessarily have to discuss the legalities or the details of the zone itself, but what they all contribute to, changing the access, putting the frontage on Laurel Road, and making the aesthetics of it more consistent with the neighborhood, putting the garage and the access, the driveways at the rear of the property. Those will be the high points. Christine?
I apologize if this was discussed in August, I wasn't here. I presume that there was some discussion around the current parking for the market going away and any difficulty that would cause.
Did that come up in the conversation when the public testimony, the public hearing occurred?
Yeah, it didn't come up at our public hearing, no. I think it came up in the meeting in June that the planning board had at the Tucker School.
Initially, yeah.
Initially,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of talk about, concern about that intersection. I will point out that there's a triangular portion of land here that's owned by the town. The planning board's feeling is the town should take a look at how we don't need this drive-through here now, so maybe there's a way to make some improvements in there that could help address that. So, because that triangle, if you look at it, is a fair amount of land, and it right now it has a driveway through it that won't be necessary or functional. Although, exactly how that intersection works would take a little bit of study, but I think there would be some room to consider parking within it.
I think it's important, there's a lot of stopping and starting there, and it could cause some traffic
Good
difficulties.
point. Mhm.
I have a feeling that's going to be brought up by people in the town meeting who are familiar with that area, because it is kind of it can be, at certain hours of the day, it is kind of tough to get through that. Certainly if you're a pedestrian, that's a challenge.
I don't know the legal arrangement between the parties, the different property owners.
Well, the acquisitions have not all taken place, so that will, I'm sure, be a discussion point among the parties when the consolidation of that property occurs.
And there's only really 3 or 4 spots in there.
Yeah,
I'm sure it can be arranged.
that can be managed, yeah.
Right.
Okay, are there any other questions? Thank you for the clarification.
I'll just,
George,
George, I'll just point
Cheryl.
something else out. This requires a special permit, so what that means is it would come
Two-thirds.
to the planning, well, it requires 2/3 vote at town
Town
meeting,
meeting.
but if it passes and it gets, also passes muster at the state level, then if an applicant were to come forward, want to build on this property, they would have to file with the planning department, and it would come to the planning board for a special permit. And then we do a very detailed review of the site plan, of the architecture, and stormwater drainage, traffic patterns, et cetera. And so that would be a level of review typical of all of our special permits. But I don't know if everyone's familiar with that, so I just wanted to point that out.
That should be also included in the comment. That's a critical point. The two-thirds vote requirement of the town meeting and the fact that any successful applicant who consolidates those properties and wants to take advantage of this change in the zoning would have to gain a special permit from the planning board. Very important. So those points for whoever's going to draft that one, keep those fresh in your mind, because that one's actually very straightforward. So that'll be good. Yes,
Do you already
Courtney?
have an applicant?
No, well, there's a property owner's interested in doing something with the property. The neighborhood's interested in having something happen, but the underlying zoning is not what the applicant or the current property owner would like to do. So we don't have, they can't really be an applicant until they have zoning under which to apply.
So you have some interest then?
Yeah,
Have interest,
There's
yes.
interest, so it'll be interesting to see if this is going to be commensurate with whatever the plans could be ultimately, and however it's going to be priced. Okay, any other questions? If none, the chair will entertain a motion to recommend Article, sorry, let me get the right number.
7.
Article 7, right, to the town meeting.
So
We have a second?
Second.
Okay, do we have any further discussion? All in favor? Aye, thank you very much. It passes. Article 7 will be recommended for approval. Article 8, which is adjustment of the term of the planning board. Cheryl?
There was conversation about this. Government Study Committee reviewed it, had conversation about it. They were generally supportive of it. They didn't take a vote. The planning board itself, I think, for the reasons that we mentioned previously, still wanted to put this forward. What the language differences here just have to do with the legal references.
Right. Is there any
If anybody wants me to go through again, what the thinking was, I'm happy to do it,
I
but.
think it may be helpful because
Okay.
we have to draft the comment
Okay.
in short order. We just want to be sure that we get the points that are important to the planning board so we can convey them to the town meeting, because that may answer some questions before we have to ask them.
So as we spoke about, needing two-thirds vote at town meeting, for our special permits, we need a 4/5 vote of the planning board. So if any one member has to recuse, has an illness, was elected after the beginning of a hearing began, then it leaves it to be a unanimous of 4-4 who are eligible to vote. So one of the thoughts is that, so for example, if you have a member coming in at the beginning, and it might be a full year before they're able to vote on one of these. So the thought, this is companion in some ways to the associate member, which we talked about, but also the fact that a term of 5 years for some people, knowing that they can't miss a meeting because it might derail an application from that 4/5 vote, knowing that they can only miss one of the hearings related to a particular application for that 4/5 vote. It's a burden that some people think, how can I commit to that for 5 years? Where, I might jeopardize an application, that is something that's been under review for a year, if I can't make those meetings. So we think it keeps the pool of people, if you will, who decide to run for the planning board more limited, that it might open it up more if it's a 3-year. If we think about the Board of Selectmen, the school committee, every other elected body, I believe, definitely those, is a 3-year term. Then you think about a 3-year term, 2 3-year terms, that's a 6-year term. Planning board at a 5-year term, if you're thinking of 2 terms, it's a 10-year term. And so, we've had some recently, the current membership of the planning board is, everyone's in their first term. Prior, in the last few years, though, some people who had been on for 20 or 30 years had just either decided not to run or were not reelected. And if you think about that, well, you might say that's institutional history with it. You might also say that's not a broad cross-section of viewpoints,
Yes.
right? So we were thinking we get a more cross-section of people, more viewpoints. Some people said, well, if there's a learning curve. Well, in the Warrant Committee, there's a learning curve.
My goodness, yes. Oh dear, is there ever?
And Planning Board, there's a learning curve too, but we do have a lot of opportunity for training that's available to Planning Board and Zoning Board of Appeal members in the state. So we felt as if that sort of learning curve was not a real obstacle to going to a 3-year versus a 5-year. The real impetus was to attract, a cross-section and have there be some, vigorous debate at the Planning Board.
So just to be sure, there are 5 members elected to the planning board, and of those 5 members, one is the chair, yourself. And missing one meeting in the course of a discussion of a special permit within what period of time?
Well, special permits, the public hearing can stay open as long as there's still questions or basically testimony for us. I've seen some last for many months.
But if a member
Many
misses
months.
one meeting in
can
the
miss
course
one
of that,
meeting.
you're not eligible
miss
to vote.
two.
You can miss one, you cannot miss 2.
Right.
So that poses an obstacle for some people and would complicate the ability for the planning board to consider the special permit in a reasonable period of time.
Well, if for any other reason anybody else couldn't,
Then you've got a big problem.
then you've got a problem.
A big problem. So if 2 people miss 2 meetings, are you back to square one with the special permit?
We are.
Oh my goodness, yeah. So there's.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so this would be a significant change. Was there any sense, just for my edification, of increasing the size of the planning board from 5 to 7 or 9 or whatever? Was that ever considered?
Someone asked about that. We had not discussed that. In that
I mean, that
case,
would just
John,
that
are
would
you
just
still a
increase.
4,
John, do you
5,
have
or 6,
a comment on that?
That would require a special act of the legislature to
Ah.
increase it more than 5.
So we would have to approach that, and that would be, I'm sure, that would be probably more time-consuming and more of a process to file that legislation and wait for approval and hearings, et cetera. Okay, that answers the question.
A supermajority is still required for the special permit, right, John?
And the supermajority is 4 out of the 5 members, which places a burden on,
And if you increase
The
the number,
members
you
to be
still
there.
need a supermajority, so
right, that's true, okay. So you'd have a lot of changes if you increase, you have to request a number of changes operationally and functionally if you expanded the size of the body itself. Okay. Is everybody clear on on the significance of this? I appreciated it when you put it in those terms. If 2 people miss 2 meetings, then the applicant for the special permit is in a predicament. And predicaments like that, when you're talking about building issues, et cetera, can be very expensive.
So, for example, we have an application that's coming forward. People might be familiar with the property on Canton Avenue called the Carberry property.
Yes.
And that's a big project, and it probably will take a lot of meetings to review. And we,
Of the meeting of the planning board?
yes, so
Is that a special permit sort of a
It
thing?
is.
Oh, I see. Oh.
that was zoning language that was passed last year, I believe. But so the application has been filed with the planning department, and they're doing their internal review. And peer review will be done on the traffic and the stormwater designs, and then we'll take it up and start the public hearing.
Wow.
But as long as we have questions as the board, and as long as the public has questions they want answered, that public hearing will stay open. And it'll get continued, from, meeting to meeting.
And continued, I see. Wow.
So,
It's quite a process.
so that's the type of complexity of something that we'll review. So Brook Road, while that one looks complex, Carberry is
40
a lot
acres
more
is a lot more complex,
Yeah.
particularly with all the traffic implications at Upper Canton Avenue and Blue Hill Avenue. Yes, of course. Okay, is everybody clear on the issues here? And for the individual who's going to draft the article, draft the commentary for the article, just those points are terrifically important. It actually makes it simple to hear that, makes it simple and straightforward as to why the town meeting should really consider this seriously, and it'll help to lead the discussion, I think, for the members of the town meeting when they see a comment that is clear. If that's the case, the chair, if there's no other discussion, the chair will entertain a motion to recommend this for approval to the town meeting.
I'll recommend.
Do we have a second?
The motion.
Second. Any further discussion? None. All in favor? Opposed? Article 8 is recommended for approval. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we did it. Thank you very much. Cheryl, thank you very much.
Sorry,
Are you available if
did you
we
do
have any
Article 16
questions?
already?
I'm sorry?
Did you do Article 16?
Article 16, right, sorry. I thought we did this one.
We did 9 already.
We did 9 already, and this is the gender-neutral language.
We approved that already.
We approved it, we voted on
You
it.
did?
We
Okay.
voted on Article 16. John, I do have a question for you on Article 17. Article 17 is a citizen's petition.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Cheryl,
you.
very much. If we have questions on any of the details as we look at the comments, as we go through in the weekend, would you be very good and text me your phone number in case?
Absolutely.
Please do, because just text me the phone number in case I have questions as I go through, and there are some details that may need to be clarified, because we do want to get this in on time. And I think it looks very good that we're going to get it in just under the wire, but I don't want it to have to go through multiple drafts if we can help it, and you would certainly be critical in that.
As I said, George, in my email to you, I'm happy to help with the comments. I know some of this is
Arcane.
arcane, and I've been dealing with it for some time, so I'm happy to help.
Thank
with
you very
the
much. We'll be
comments.
doing it. We'll be doing it within the next couple of days.
Yep,
And I think
I'm
that's actually
available.
pretty good, because if we can get it done and it's fresh in everybody's mind, it'll be that much better for everybody. Thank you very much for your
Okay,
help.
thank you.
John, could you come? I have a question about Article 17 and how we should deal with that. We voted no on it, but the question of how to report it to the town meeting, we just recommend a no vote, and the rationale has to be Article 16 addresses the subject adequately. That's all we have to say. The citizens petition is what we're talking about. We voted it down. We voted to
Representative for the citizen petition recommended 16.
yeah,
She was actually
she
okay with
endorsed 16.
Right.
Can we say something of that nature also? That the citizens petitioners for Article 17 endorsed 16?
In your comment?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that okay to say?
Yes.
Okay, because I don't want to misrepresent, so we can do that. Petitioners endorsed.
Is the recommendation of the warrant committee to vote no?
Yes. Yeah, we voted that one down.
Based
Because-
on the recommendation.
On the recommendation of the woman the sponsor of the petition 17, saying that Article 16 went farther than 17.
What you said all of that is perfectly good for the comment.
Okay, that's fine.
Would explain, because otherwise there's going to be confusion, I think.
Yeah. Well, there was confusion when we first addressed it, too. I can imagine that would go.
Understandable,
Yeah, okay. Endorsed 16. Okay, because I'm writing that one. And I just want to make sure I get it right.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, excuse me, could I introduce Attorney Kevin Freitag from
Please.
our office? He's working on this with us.
Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
We appreciate your work already. John, is there any other advice that you have for us? You've been very active, and we're grateful for sending the revised language, the multiple drafts for the revised language. I think we've got pretty clean language for the use of the warrant report itself. And we'll just send in many of the recommendations are already in. All the recommendations will be in, and many of the comments are already incorporated. We're going to be sending the rest of them in the next 24 hours, or next 16 hours actually, to get them done. And then we'll circulate the draft so that you can see it, that
Yes.
town administrator and the Board of Selectmen can see it as well.
There's one comment which I forgot to send to Ms. Hoy, that I think it's Article 12. It seeks
Yeah.
to amend the general bylaws. What I forgot to...
Plastic
recommend-
bag, right.
At the end, and I'll send this along when you draft, but the concept is, I should have added at the end, the number to be assigned by the town clerk, and I don't think I did for Article 12. But
Okay.
just so it doesn't catch your committee by surprise.
Okay.
Because it's easy to do that, because sometimes when you vote a zoning bylaw amendment or a general bylaw amendment, with the rush of everything, you forget that there's already been an amendment
Yes.
recently. It's not yet in the bound volume, so that language, I think, is good to keep in mind for the future.
Okay, great.
Because go ahead, she has the town clerk has the records of all that. So they can easily assign the correct number, whereas with all the flurry of activity, it's happened once with our zoning bylaws, actually, you may recall. The number was just inadvertently the wrong number, so then you have to amend it in the future.
Yeah, it gets complex.
So but just so you'll be aware that that's coming.
Okay, great.
Nothing to do right now, but just
Yeah, yeah.
when we're reviewing
That'll be,
Well, if the chair and the committee is okay with that language being added, so that you don't have to re-vote it or anything.
I don't think we'd have to do that, because
Right.
we've already approved it, it's just
Yes.
a work in process, and the
Yes.
language is something that we don't have to, amend at this point. You had a question?
Probably a silly one, but I don't mind asking.
Never silly.
else. So this surrounding, like Stop and Shops on both sides of Milton, and there's, I think maybe like where Osco Drug was, Rite Aid now?
Oh, down at Central, on the other side of the river, at Central Ave.
Right.
Right, in Mattapan.
Any thoughts about, in proximity to Milton? Because I know a lot of people go to Stop and Shops on both sides, and they're gonna still be selling plastic bags, and then
But Boston's doing it too,
Boston's do.
right?
Well, not Stop and Shop, well, in Quincy and what's that, Hyde Park?
George is right.
It's Hyde Park is the one you're talking about, I think.
The Hyde Park one, and also.
Over at Truman Highway.
Right, and also Newport Ave as well.
Right.
All right.
Because, I see
Stop and
everyone
Shop.
there.
Yeah, well, Milton people
You
shop
just-
in these stores,
Right.
depending where they live, right?
I don't know if there's.
We
any
can't control what
thought-
happens there, though.
Is that your question?
Sort of, yes.
We
Can
only have
we-
the authority to regulate in town, so.
Right.
We can't do much for what they bring in.
What they bring in,
Right.
right.
And some people still like them to line their wastebaskets, so they're going to be used whether we like it or not.
Just, I guess the only suggestion I have is your DPW is excellent at educating people, and your sustainability coordinator, just to keep them telling people that even if this bylaw doesn't apply, still, you can't recycle certain types of bags, bring them back to where you brought them. So the spirit of this ban, if it's voted, would be followed by people, not that, at least they'd continue the education about the limits of recycling, so we don't contribute inadvertently to that problem. And that,
I know we can't, enforce in other towns, but, that, whatever can help.
at least if our citizens get the message that if the Stop and Shop bag comes from Reedville or somewhere,
Right.
then don't throw it in recycling, put it in, bring it back to where you got it.
Yeah, because there's always a receptacle in the store for the used
Yes.
bag,
Yes.
which is helpful. John, thank you very much. Any other questions for our town council? Thank you very much. John, thank you for coming. Kevin, nice to meet you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, our last order of business is to assign the comment section for these approvals that we just made. So, I will take the lead. I am already writing the comment for Article 17. I will write the comment for Article 9, and I'll even take Article 8. So I will do Article 8, 9, and 17. So we have Articles 1 through 8, which still require volunteers. And please keep in mind, the sooner you get these to Lynn, the better, but certainly no later than noon tomorrow.
I can take 3 and 4.
Okay, Brian will do 3 and 4. Brian, yes.
To what extent should we leverage Cheryl's offer on the comments? Because these are somewhat granular. and
Some of
nuanced.
them are, right. I think you take her offer as it was made, genuinely and seriously.
Yeah.
But again, time is of the essence, so concise, to the point. And Christine, you're already doing one, I know.
I did it.
You did it,
I
you
don't know
sent
if I
it
did
in.
it correctly, but I
Well,
did it.
it looked fine to me. What I saw looked fine.
I'll do 7. I understand that one, I think.
Okay, so we have, of the ones we just approved, we have 9, 3, 4, and 7. So we still have 1, 5, and 6, and 8.
You said you were taking.
I'm doing 8, yeah, I'm sorry, all right.
But I thought Chris was taking.
He's doing 7, he's doing 16. Is he going to do 17 too?
Yes.
Okay,
I think
so-
you took 16 and 17.
Okay, and Gwendy did 15?
That's the Kidder Branch. Yes.
Gwendy, no, that's 14. Well, we have 15 already, that's fine, we did that one already. Okay, so I have 8 and 9. So we still have 1 and 2 and 5 and 6. Who's a brave soul who's going to take responsibility? We need these done. And we have to get them done, so I'll appreciate any help.
I can do 5 or 6. I'm just I missed a couple meetings, so I'm gonna need some.
I would, yeah,
Content guidance.
Cheryl will help you out with that. Okay, Brian, go pray.
You doing 5 and 6, I'm sorry?
Yes. Good man, thank you very much. So we just have 1 and 2. These are the height regulation, which is just a correction of an omission, and the key there would be to incorporate the omission and the distinct Article 10 from 2014 Fall Town Meeting to restore the omission that was inadvertent. That's one that's not too tough. And then there's the home amendment, that is the home occupation use, which is again reasonably straightforward. But I don't want to overburden anybody.
I'll
We
give
have-
one a shot, since it's reinstating.
Brian,
some
thank you.
language.
That one should be quick to draft. So, Article 2, amendment of the vote for the home occupation, which is, again, relatively straightforward. No, Chris, oh, thank you very much. Okay.
So
Clinton?
that was 2?
Yep, that's Clinton. Okay, so we've got Brian Foster doing 1, Clinton doing 2, Brian again doing 3 and 4, Brian Beaupre doing 5 and 6, Christine doing 7, Jean Gimber, and I will do 8 and 9. I have reported in already my introduction, so once we have those, we'll be done. So remember, please no later than noon tomorrow. If you can even do them tonight when you get home while it's still fresh in your head, even better. Concise, to the point, gathering together the salient, persuasive arguments that were brought, particularly for the planning board ones, and then we'll be in good shape, and we will have made our deadline, which I honestly thank you for, because this is a lot of work.
That's a question. So the comments, do you edit them as appropriate?
There are several people that actually look for it, they proof it, they edit it, and if there are omissions or anything that we have to add, we can do that, but we need to have this to the printer by Monday, close of business?
Yes, so actually, hopefully, this will be all sent out to you guys for your own comments and review.
Right.
So whatever you write, you should review your comments, and it wouldn't hurt to check others.
Yeah, and make sure that the transposition, because sometime when you're cutting and pasting, things can get awry. So just certainly double check your own when you see it, make sure that it is exactly as you want it to be, and if there's any substantive change that has to be made, somebody would catch it, whether it's the town administrator or John Flynn. But again, if we have to have these in hand and cut and pasted and patched together,
It has to circulate throughout.
so we can circulate it through the weekend. We're all going to, anybody who's involved, the selectmen, Katie Conlon is terrific about this, because we do have to get it to the printer Monday in order to make the deadline for it to be mailed out to the homes by the 2nd of October, which is 3 weeks before the town meeting, which is required by statute. So I think that brings us to the end. This has been extremely efficient. I thank you all very much. Does anybody have any questions? Lynn?
I'm sorry, just a correction, it's Chris who's working on 15, 16, 17.
Chris is doing-
Yes, it's Gwen.
Okay, yeah. Gwendy has the library, right?
Article 13, 14.
She does 13 and 14. She's doing the library. Okay.
Just have to email her about the comments.
I will
as
do
we
that.
reopen it.
Yeah, I'll do that. Okay, so do we have any new business to consider? Our next meeting is the town meeting itself. The way it works is the warrant committee has to be in session in order for the town meeting to convene. So we meet before the town meeting, which starts at 7 o'clock. We'll convene at the high school in another room at probably 6:30. And if there's anything that comes up that has to be voted on in anticipation of the town meeting, anything that comes up as an amendment, we will meet and consider it at that point. So we're prepared for the town meeting. Then we adjourn and continue our meeting at the town meeting, and then we go stay in session through the town meeting. I'm hoping it's going to be one evening. There are 17 articles, depending on how much discussion takes place. It could go into Tuesday night, but we're optimistic that with only 17 articles, two of them we're recommending for, but two of them not being, two remanding to their committees and one being voted down. We're effectively looking at 14 articles. It shouldn't be horrible or too terribly involved, but you never know.
Milton High School, that same room?
Milton High School, we'll communicate the room once it's assigned to us. But that's how it works. And then after that, we will start we'll have a few weeks off, and then we'll start in on the budget process. I've asked the town departments to have the preliminary budgets to us by December 1, so we can actually go through them, look at them, and if subcommittees want to convene, we can assign subcommittees in December. They can convene, have the conversations, go through the budgets with the departments, so that when we actually go to review them here in the whole body of the warrant committee, the hard questions will be answered, and we will have vetted them. They'll be scrubbed, so that as we go through and vote for approval and recommendation of the town meeting, the process is a little bit easier on us as a body. So, is there any new business? If none, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Thank you very much. Thank you for your work, and